The true story behind The Hills Have Eyes. Sawney Bean was a 16th century Scottish outlaw who, along with his wife Agnes Douglas, led a clan which grew to nearly 50 members through incest, surviving entirely off human flesh. The Beans lived in a remote coastal cave, isolated from society, and survived by ambushing travelers along lonely roads. They dragged victims back to their hideout and butchered them, eating what they could and discarding the remains outside. Over 25 years, they were responsible for over 1,000 disappearances. King James VI led a search party of 400 men to the cave, where they found piles of human bones, mutilated remains, and stolen possessions. The entire Bean clan was captured and taken to Edinburgh and executed.
Scary facts you didn't know about. You can actually die if you laugh too much. 3:44 a.m. is the most common time when people wake up for no reason. 80% of stalkers are men.
So I accidentally fell asleep with YouTube playing on my TV, and it's like the middle of the night, and when I woke up for my dream, this was on my TV. Who are you? Why is that on my TV?
Every night I listen to one side of it. And all y'all say, hey. All y'all say, woman. Hey.
The creepiest thing happened to me today, and I don't know if it's like actually creepy or this generation's making us think it's creepy. I was walking home and I have to pass this really busy intersection to get to my street to come home. And as I'm waiting to pass, because I'm like, hey, I need to wait, you know, and I'm seeing right next to me, there's a guy in his like late 40s, and he's sitting on this like pole thing, and he's like, you know, sit on the pole. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much, but no, it's okay, I'm gonna cross the street, I have to go home. And he goes, oh, you're going home? Okay. So he goes in the middle of the intersection, doesn't even look, like busts everything's passing, and he's like, stop. And I'm like, okay, thank you. And he's like, okay, go. And I'm like, okay, like, thanks so much. So I had to cross this way, and that way to get home. He did it to each section that I was walking, and I'm like, okay, like, thank you so much. Didn't really think too much of it, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then he goes, oh, don't worry, it's not like I'm gonna follow you home or anything, I'm just trying to help you out. And I'm like, oh, I never thought about you following me home until you just said it. So now I was like, are you gonna follow me home or not? So like, why? I feel so bad that I categorize him as a creep just by being nice, but I'm like, who also says, don't worry, I'm not gonna follow you home? Let me know. I don't know. I feel so bad.
No. La gang, on vient de vivre le début d'un film d'horreur. OK? On est assis bien peinants en train d'écouter un beau film, OK? D'amour, de Noël, ça va bien. Tout d'un coup, tac. On se revient. On voit deux ombres passer. Tac. Ils ont essayé de rentrer chez moi. Ils ont essayé de rentrer chez ma voisine. Et par la suite, ils sont rentrés dans leur voiture. Ils ont fait 3-4 pâtés de maison. Et ils sont dans leur voiture. Ils textent des amis. Et on appelle la police.
Non, je vois pas bien.
Faut que j'aille prendre leur plaque. Genre, ils veulent-tu comme...
Je pourrais vomir.
Passer du temps avec nous? Non!
These are YouTubers who recorded their own deaths, part 1. Tor Eckhoff was a Norwegian YouTuber who rose to fame with his videos where he would do pretty risky stuff on frozen waters, including ice skating on thin sheets of ice and diving into ice holes shirtless. And to get more of an audience, he would do some odd things like gulp bottles of vodka and roll around in the snow in sub-zero temperatures. But sadly, on November 27th, 2021, just a few days after he turned 57, and disturbingly posted a video titled "I am not dead, I am 57 today," Tor Ekhoff fell through the ice on a frozen lake where he was shooting a video. Before he began, he texted the person he lived with that he was okay and was looking forward to getting good footage for his video. After falling through the ice, Tor quickly tried climbing back out, but because the temperature wasn't cool enough to freeze back the edges, it kept breaking under his weight, which ultimately trapped him. After a while, Tor was picked up by a group of divers and was sent to a hospital by an air ambulance. The doctors tried everything to bring him back to life, but it was too late. Tor had been in the water for far too long.
When I was a kid, between the ages of 14 to 16, me and my friends were really into hanging out anywhere other than our houses. Most of the time, we would go to some fast food place and chill there, or just find some spot in the woods near the park. I guess we were at that age where we wanted to be alone and not have people looking over our shoulders all the time. The only problem with this was that on the weekends, when we'd be out late, most stores and dining areas closed before we were ready to call it a night. During winter break one year, we ran into this problem a lot. We'd go to the parks to hang out, only to find that even in the late hours of the night, there would be multiple other groups that had the same idea. Then one night, my friend JT brought up his parents' old farmhouse, saying it could be a cool spot to explore and that nobody else would be there. He'd mentioned it a few times before this, but we never thought much of it until that night. JT drove me and my other friend, Paul, out into what looked like the middle of nowhere, arriving at a wooden fence. The fence was closed off with a chain, since it was a private property, and JT didn't have the key to it, so we parked and hopped over it. From the edge of the wooden fence, though, the first thing I realized was that I couldn't see the farmhouse. Yeah, it was dark out, and there were no lights anywhere, but I couldn't even make out the shape of the house in any direction. JT started walking, leading the way on a rough gravel path, as he explained why his parents even had the place to begin with. He said it was his grandparents' farmhouse, but when they died, they passed it down to his parents. Apparently it was in horrible condition, and his parents didn't know what to do with it, so they just kept it. That was almost 10 years ago. Nobody had done any maintenance, or even checked up on it, in over a decade. We walked down this path, following JT for a good 10 minutes, before we could finally see the house. Even from just the outline of it in the dark, you could tell it was in bad shape. Part of the roof was dipping inward like it was about to collapse, and some of the siding panels were hanging from the wood. All of us were quiet now, just looking at it as we walked closer. When we got up to the front of the house, the door was covered by a large sheet of wood, so we went around to the back, where the door was completely missing. We each turned on our phone flashlights and stepped inside. Surprisingly, the place wasn't really trashed like we thought it'd be. Most of the furniture and stuff didn't seem to have been moved very much. It was extremely dusty though, and our phone lights were not the best, so maybe it just looked better than it was. We split up after a minute, just walking around the first floor and looking. I entered a hallway on the left side of the house and began walking down, when suddenly someone walked past the end of the hallway. I froze, and out of panic, I called out JT, as if it was maybe him, but I already knew it wasn't. The man I saw, although it was dark, was much taller and thinner than either of my friends. I stepped back and started to go where I'd last seen the two of them. When I turned around the corner and held up my light, both JT and Paul were standing in the middle of the room, looking away from me. I stepped into the room and looked where their lights were pointing. At the edge of the light, the man was standing and staring right back at them. It was like they were all frozen in fear, unsure of what to make of the situation. "Guys, let's just leave," I said shakily, but trying to act calm so the guy didn't do anything. But that must have triggered everyone's reactions, because suddenly, we were all sprinting to the back door and running out into the open field. I can't even say for sure if the man chased us out, but JT says he was confident he heard footsteps right behind him. We pretty much ran straight back to the car and drove off, not taking any more risks. I think we can all assume that the man was just a squatter or homeless person defending the place he calls home, but without a good look at him, it's hard to say for sure. JT said he'd tell his parents about it so they could lock down the farmhouse, but he never went through with it because he was worried about getting in trouble for going there. Whatever happened that night remains the most horrifying experience I've had, and if JT was right, and the man was trying to chase us, then we got really lucky to have all gotten out unharmed.
What are the ancestral lands? How long have these people been around?
Millennia. See, we are sold this kind of evolutionary tale about our species, but it was all fabricated. When these families discovered the 7 continents of the inner ice wall, they realized something horrifically diabolical.
What's that?
The very particular geographical layout of the land masses in contrast to the wall would allow for the perfect deception, the perfect lie.
It can't be.
Oh, but it is. You see, these people are ancient, but they were far from stupid. No, see, on the contrary, they were quite genius. See, the Constantines, another one of these 7 families, were known for their mathematical wizardry. Shortly after arriving to the inner ice wall, Richard Constantine Jr. conceived of a bright idea. It's called convergent polarity distortion, a practical way to distort the perception of those they would soon place inside the inner ice wall. Richard realized that the circular layout of the continents inside the ice wall could be exploited. The continents, when viewed in contrast to the towering ice barrier, formed what he called the Great Containment Plane, a naturally isolating feature, and so he sought to impose a false paradigm. Using his knowledge of non-Euclidean geometry, spherical projection, and psychological manipulation to craft the idea of a self-encompassing sphere. See, he reimagined the center of these lands as north, and the exterior ice wall as south.
No, it just can't be.
I'm going to go ahead and say this is a joke for entertainment purposes only.
I've always been good friends with one of my cousins, Cole, who was the same age as I am. The two of us were not quite inseparable, but we always did get along very well together, and we were often found together, both in school and outside of school. When we were 12 and in the 6th grade, I was hanging out with Cole on a Friday afternoon around the later part of May, and we were psyched at the start of the weekend. We wound up at his house since he didn't live too far from me, and at one point my mom called to say that our grandpa was in the hospital. While the issue with our grandpa wasn't expected to be life-threatening, he was being kept at the hospital overnight for observation, and both my parents and Cole's were planning on staying with him and my grandma at the hospital. I was told that I was given the okay to stay at Cole's house for the night, with Cole's 15-year-old brother, Hunter, being in charge while our parents were out. This was fine by us. I got along well enough with Hunter, and he was never the bossy older brother/cousin that some of my other friends said they had to put up with. We ordered a pizza and enjoyed goofing off as boys that age tend to do. At around 9 or so, there was a knock at the front door and Cole went to answer it. I was a bit curious as to who it could be at that time of the night, and so I watched from a ways back. At the door, there were 2 older guys. They said that they were there with the city and that they were investigating reports about the water pressure supposedly being bad in the neighborhood. They asked Cole if his parents were home, and when Cole said they were unavailable at the moment, which is what we were told to say to strangers if our parents weren't home, the guys then started asking a bunch of questions about how the water pressure was in the house and if they could come inside to check. Hunter came over at that point and politely told the guys that the water pressure was fine and perhaps they should move on to check the other homes in the neighborhood. The guys seemed reluctant to leave, but eventually they turned and walked away after Hunter started closing the door. After the door was shut, we looked at each other and shrugged, but neither of us really thought too much after that, and we went back to doing what we were doing. Eventually, we decided to go to bed. Cole and Hunter shared a bedroom, and we all agreed that I'd sleep in there with them, rather than me hitting the sack on the couch or something like that, so that way we could all talk while we fell asleep. Hunter grabbed a sleeping bag out of their camping supplies for me, and when we got back into the bedroom, we all stripped down to our underwear/pajamas. And then they climbed into their beds, and I quickly crawled into the sleeping bag, and after talking for a while about random stuff, we all eventually fell asleep. Early the next morning, I got up because I had to pee, and so I quietly got out of the sleeping bag and went and did my business in the bathroom. On the way back to the bedroom, I heard something in the family room, which was on the opposite end of the house from the bedroom, in particular bathroom I was using. I didn't pay too much attention to it at the time, thinking it must either be Cole or Hunter, until I got back in the bedroom and realized that both of them were still in there. Trying not to panic, I awoke them and I told them that I thought someone was in the house. They quietly followed me, and the moment we walked into the family room, we saw the 2 guys from the night before in there. And it was rather clear that they were robbing the place. One of them started moving towards us as he pulled out a wicked-looking knife. The 3 of us promptly raced to the front door somehow and managed to get it unlocked and open in time, and we fled outside. As luck would have it, a cop was driving by at that particular moment, so we quickly flagged him down and we told him about the two guys in the house. The cop called for backup, and within a couple of minutes, several other cops were there, and they proceeded to enter the house. After some searching, they caught the two guys. The cops figured out that the two guys must have entered from the window in the laundry room that had a broken latch, and that they had probably targeted this house specifically because they knew us kids were alone, and they probably figured that if we discovered them, we would be easier to deal with than adults. To add insult to injury, when we were waiting outside while the cops searched the house, some of the neighbors came out to see what the commotion was about, and this included some kids who went to the same school as Cole and me, including a few who were in our 6th grade class with us. It was during that time that the three of us realized that we had never got the chance to get dressed, so just like in the stereotypical nightmare, we had to stand outside in full view of everyone in just our briefs for what seemed like forever before being allowed back inside. When we went back to school on Monday, Cole and I had to put up with more than a bit of snickering and being the butt of every joke for the next few weeks until school ended for the summer.
I know you think I'm about to tell you to get a snack, but I'm gonna tell you to go eat those leftovers before they go to waste. Cause y'all know, y'all gonna eat them for a couple days and get tired of them. Anyways, for this story, let's call this girl Bianca. If you know Bianca, tag them. Now, Bianca went to a university hostel. After COVID, the university started having renovations. So with having the renovations, they had very limited space for the returning students. And so Bianca ended up having to share her room with like 7 other girls, including her sister. Despite how tight it was, they made it work. Life was normal. So they had this mutual guy, right? The guy told them that his little sister will be joining the hostel. She's a freshman. And so when his sister finally came, he introduced everybody to his sister. She was very bubbly and she was very eager to settle in with them. Well, they kind of took her under their wing, all 7 sisters. Not sisters, but y'all get it. They took her under their wing so much so that she ended up actually moving into their room. So now there were 8 of them. They showed her around the school. They told her all the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts of the hostel. In a short time, she kind of became family. So one day, she comes up to them and she says, "Hey guys, my mom is coming to visit." So everybody's excited to meet her mom. Her mom comes. She was like this very nice middle-aged woman. And she brought food for them when she came. They, of course, welcomed her with open hands. Everybody's happy to meet her mom. Everybody's laughing. They shared the meal that she brought for them. It was a great day. It was great. It went great. Or so they think. Everything seemed normal. They ate. They had a good time. And when it was time for them to go to bed, they went to bed. Also, Bianca ended up telling the new girl, let's call her Sarah. So if you know Sarah, tag her. Bianca ended up sharing a bed with Sarah because, like I said, they were very limited with space. That night before they went to bed, they went with their nightly routines. Except they didn't really pray together that night because of all the chaos from earlier. There were a couple of arguments, but all in all, it was a normal night. Some prayed by themselves, some didn't pray at all, and everybody just went to sleep. And then exactly at 3 a.m., on the dot, chaos erupted. First of all, Bianca woke up to somebody tugging on her leg and dragging her, pulling her, trying to pull her off the bed. The grab was so strong that when she woke up out her sleep, she still saw the mark on her leg. So immediately she screams, only for her to realize that she wasn't the only one. She started looking around and all of the other girls are like shrieking and panicking. One girl's finger was broken. Another girl said she was having a nightmare of being chased by a snake in her dream. If you know, you know. And the others are swearing up and down that there was a group of people standing by their door wearing black cloaks. So everybody's freaking out. So she goes to check on the girl that was sleeping beside her, the new girl, Sarah. But Sarah wasn't there. She's looking at the bed. She's feeling, but Sarah's not there. And so she screams. She's like, "Oh my God, where's Sarah?" And so somebody turned on the light, only for her to see Sarah right next to her. So when it was dark, she couldn't see Sarah. But the moment the light came on, Sarah was right there. And not only was she right there, but she was the only one still laying down, still asleep. Like nothing's happening. Nothing's bothering her. She ain't having no issues. And so the fact that Sarah was so calm sent shivers down Bianca's spine. So immediately, all the girls started praying, and a lot of them started calling their parents. And in the midst of all that happening, Bianca happened to look at Sarah again on the bed, and she could have sworn that Sarah was grinning, like a cold grin. She dismissed it because she was terrified and there was a lot of chaos going around. Anyway, so fast forward to the next day. Sarah comes up to all the girls and tell them that her mom that came yesterday wasn't actually her mom. that lady was her prophet. And she tells the girls the reason why she wasn't like really scared was because this happened to her before at her previous boarding school. And when this started to happen to the girls, she ended up calling her prophet to pray for them. And after that situation, it's safe to say that everybody felt off about Sarah. And whenever Sarah's mom came around, they knew not to eat from her. And funny enough, her prophet, she was still friendly. She was still acting like nothing ever happened, and so was Sarah. And everything just like went back to normal, but they can never forget that night. If you aren't already, make sure you're following me on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube, especially if they're about to take this app away. All right? All right.
This is reason number 1 as to why you should always be very careful when inviting anyone into your home, even family. So for those of you guys who follow me on here, you already know that my father and I don't have the best relationship. Recently, I found out that he had a baby, so I reached out. We ended up reuniting. I met the baby and decided to invite them over to my house for dinner. Mind you, my home is extremely protected. So if anybody comes in with any type of negativity around them, they're not going to feel well. So he comes over. The minute he walks in, he starts to become ill. He said he felt like he was going to faint, that he didn't know what was going on. They ended up cutting their visit short and practically rushed out of the door. I didn't think much of it and just decided to go on with my day. The next day, which was on Sunday, I woke up in the worst possible mood. I couldn't understand why I was in such a bad mood. I had absolutely no reason to feel so angry, but something was just really bothering me. I decided to take the kids to go watch the new Spider-Man to kind of get my mind off of it. Once I left the house, I realized that I no longer felt like that anger. Like, it was gone and I felt fine. But the minute we went back home, I started to feel angry again. Decided to ignore it. I don't know why I keep ignoring things. Decided to ignore it, went about my day. That Monday I wake up, when I go downstairs, I notice that the house is dark. Like, there's this darkness around the house. My house is extremely light. My shades are always open. I don't like darkness. But again, busy with work, I kind of just get ready and go about my day. When I get home later on that day, the house has this weird, like, rotting smell. My kids can't smell it, but I can smell it, and it's bothering me. So I go around cleaning the house. I'm like bleaching, I'm scrubbing, I'm mopping. I'm like, where's that smell coming from? I even like deep clean the trash can, like in the inside, thinking maybe something spilled in there. I couldn't get the smell from like out of my nose. That night I go to bed and end up waking up at exactly 3 a.m. So I'm like, fun, this is fun. I'm like getting chills even thinking about it. My mouth is so freaking dry. I go downstairs to get something to drink. When I go downstairs, I notice that the basement door is open. I never leave that door open. So I shut it, grabbed the water, and went back to my room. The minute I lay down, I'm paralyzed. This thing paralyzes me, and it shows itself. I'm like fighting back again. I'm not afraid of any of this stuff because I've been dealing with this stuff my whole life. So I'm pretty much laughing at it, telling it that it has no power, it needs to leave. I start to pray, and it's continuing to like hold me down. At one point, I'm able to break free and I like overpower this thing. I have one of those Stanley cups, the dupe, not the real one. I'm not spending $40 on a cup. Next to my nightstand, and I started to hit it in the head with it. Once I did this, it went away. I say my prayers and go to sleep. I wake up at about 6 a.m. and decide to go downstairs to get my coffee. When I go downstairs into the kitchen, I hear what sounds like something like fumbling in the basement, like something's falling over in the basement. And then I look and realize that the basement door is open.
This teacher essayed multiple of her students until she got pregnant. For a while, Rebecca Joins from the UK was living like her best life. She graduated university, got this really nice apartment with a long-term boyfriend. The two had actually been together since she was 15, and for a while, they had the perfect relationship. Rebecca had also recently gotten her dream job as a high school math teacher, so things were looking really good. But after 9 years of dating her long-term boyfriend, Rebecca became really controlling, possessive, and jealous. She was always accusing her boyfriend of cheating, and after a while, he broke up with her and moved out, which was really devastating for Rebecca. And pretty much right when that happened, the 2020 lockdown started, so classes were moved online and Rebecca was completely alone. But in September of 2021, Rebecca was 27 years old and that school year started with classes back in school. Rebecca was teaching math to 14 and 15-year-olds, and she's a younger teacher and I guess some people would find her attractive, and she started getting a lot of attention from her students. these teenage boys. These 14 and 15-year-old boys were constantly flirting with Rebecca, and she was lonely and single, so the 27-year-old Rebecca really liked the attention. But instead of being the responsible teacher, like the adult in this situation, Rebecca really entertained this inappropriate behavior. And there was this one 15-year-old boy in particular that was especially flirty towards Rebecca, and all the victims in this case identities have been protected, so we're just going to refer to him as Boy A. And after only being his teacher for 5 weeks, Rebecca gave Boy A her phone number. That was on October 11th, which was a Monday. The two were constantly flirting through text. It was really suggestive. And by that Friday, so only 5 days later, 27-year-old Rebecca and 15-year-old Boy A went on their first date. Boy A told his mom that he was going to be spending the night at his friend's house, and him and Rebecca went to the mall for their first date. At the mall, Rebecca bought Boy A 345-pound Gucci belt, which is like $440 in the United States. And buying victims really expensive gifts is a tactic that predators often use. After the mall, Rebecca and Boy A went back to Rebecca's apartment, and on the way, the two of them actually joked about how Boy A wasn't even old enough to drive yet. Like, yuck. Back at the apartment, Rebecca statutory SA'd Boy A multiple times. She actually lied to him and said that she was infertile and couldn't get pregnant, so the two of them didn't use protection. And this is just so wrong and illegal on so many levels. The age of consent is 18. Rebecca is Boy A's teacher. She's only known him for a couple of weeks, and this was Boy A's first time ever. And like teenage boys do, over that weekend, Boy A told all of his friends about what he did with Miss Joins. So by Monday, rumors had spread across the entire school, which of course were not rumors, and very quickly, CPS, the police, and the school were all notified. Boy A confessed to everything, and he said it honestly made him really, really uncomfortable, but he was trying to act like he was cool and mature, but he's only 15. Rebecca was arrested. She was suspended as her position as a teacher. She was let out on bail pending an investigation and a trial, with the condition that she was not allowed to have any contact with anyone under the age of 18. Unfortunately, Boy A is not the only victim in this case. So now we have to talk about Boy B. Boy B was another 15-year-old boy in Rebecca's math class, and before being arrested, Rebecca added Boy B on Snap. And while she was out on bail for the same crime, Rebecca was sending flirty and suggestive messages to Boy B, as well as inappropriate photos. And by the beginning of November, Rebecca invited Boy B over to her apartment for the first time. This is her second victim in less than 1 month, and she's already gotten caught once. First time that Boy B came over, Rebecca did assault him, but they didn't go all the way because Rebecca wanted to wait until Boy B turned 16, which was only a couple weeks away, but like that would make it any better. And as soon as he turned 16, Rebecca statutory SA'd Boy B, and this was also his first time ever. And the two would then be in a relationship for over a year. Just like with her ex-boyfriend, Rebecca became super obsessive and controlling and possessive and jealous over Boy B. She wanted all of his passwords. She would always go through his phone. She would make Boy B FaceTime her to prove that he wasn't with other girls. She also wanted Boy B's location. And if he wouldn't text her back fast enough, Rebecca would just show up to wherever he was. So now she's stalking this teenage boy. And when Boy B tried to break up with Rebecca, she threatened to unalive herself, which is like another tactic that abusers and manipulators use. But Rebecca is 28 years old now. She's almost 30, and this is what she's doing to a teenager. And then in March of 2023, Rebecca had been abusing Boy B for 18 months. She told him to come over to her apartment because she had a surprise for him. When he came over, she had a scavenger hunt set up for him all throughout her apartment, which ended with Boy B finding a baby onesie that said, "I love you, Daddy" on it. And this is so confusing because did she forget that he's a teenage boy? Like, this is something you would do if you and your husband had been trying for a baby for a while. And also, Rebecca had also told Boy B that she was infertile and couldn't get pregnant, which obviously wasn't true, but then they never used any protection. It's like this was something she planned so she could trap this teenage boy. But luckily, I think this was enough for Boy B to realize that he was so over his head that he went home and he told his parents everything, which I'm sure was really, really difficult for him to do. I mean, he's a teenage boy. He has to say that he's been sleeping with his adult teacher and now he's gotten her pregnant. So I really applaud his bravery for feeling like he can go to his parents. But Rebecca was arrested again. And in January of 2024, she gave birth in prison to Boy B's baby, and Boy B and his family have full custody of that baby. Rebecca's trial began in May of 2024, and she really tried to act like she was the victim. Every single day into court, she would bring this like little baby hat. You can see in this photo, she has it tucked into her pants for some reason. And sadly, some people don't see men as victims, especially of SA, even if they're teenagers. So the prosecution asked the jury to imagine how they would feel if this was a male adult teacher on trial and he had essayed two 15-year-old girls and had gotten one of them pregnant, because there is no difference. Rebecca was found guilty on all charges, but sadly, she was only sentenced to 6.5 years in prison, meaning she'll get out of prison by the time she's in her mid-30s. And I truly think that Rebecca is a dangerous predator and will likely reoffend. And also, when Rebecca is released from prison, she will get visitation of Boy B's baby, which I don't agree with at all. I definitely think if she was a man and the roles were reversed, that would not be the case. But luckily, when Rebecca is released from prison, she will be on the registered SA offender list for the rest of her life. And if you watched to end this video, thank you so much. It would mean so much to me if you share this video. I don't want Rebecca to get out of prison thinking that she can just live her life as normal. I want as many people as possible to know this monster's face.
I had to turn on all my lights after reading this story. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and today I'm going to be talking about a story that I've been kind of putting off making the video for. And a huge driving factor on this, and now I'm going to be fully transparent about this. I'm not a fan of making videos about demonic things or demons specifically because every single time I've made a video, whether it's my personal experience or if it's someone else's, I hear things in either the background or in the audio, and I have to reshoot it, something, every single time. I've also had instances where my dogs are growling at things that are not there, so you get the gist on why I'm a little hesitant to make videos about demonic things. But without further ado, let's get into it. This story comes from Lexi, who lives in West Virginia and lives in a very haunted house. She says that the hauntings started around the time when she was 6. Just for context purposes, she was 4 when her parents got a divorce, and her mom started seeing this man when she was around 6 years old, and shortly after, all of these hauntings started. And at first it was small occurrences, like her mom telling her to pick up her toys, so she would do so, and when they would come back, the toys would be scattered all across the floor. And she mentions during these instances, her mom and her both were afraid because they both knew that it was almost impossible for these things to be happening. But they continued to brush off these little noises, these little occurrences, because they could be coincidental. And Lexi says that this continued for 2 years before her mom's boyfriend moved in, and his parents actually lived down the street from Lexi's mom, where all of this stuff is occurring. And one night, Lexi, her mom, and her mom's boyfriend go down to his parents' house to have dinner. A couple of his cousins were over with their kids, and there was this little girl there who was like 2 years older than Lexi at the time, so little girl was 10, Lexi was 8. And when they were playing, this little girl just out of the blue says, "Did you know that there's an old woman who lives in the bedroom upstairs?" And at the time, she thought it was creepy, but she just kind of brushed it off, thinking that the little girl was just trying to scare her. A couple days later, her mom is walking up the stairs to use the bathroom, and Lexi just tells her mom, "Hey," little girl's name, said that there is a woman who lives in the bedroom upstairs. Her mom kind of turns around and is like, "Which bedroom?" So Lexi walks upstairs, gets to the door, and goes to look in and points and says, "This one." And as she does, she did in fact see a woman standing there, very pale, black hair, and a long nightgown. Lexi specifically said that it looked like it was from the early 1900s. And obviously upon seeing this, Lexi ran downstairs, and her mom was really confused until they got back to their house, and she explained the entire situation. Lexi's mom's boyfriend was overhearing this conversation and asked her to describe this woman, and when she did, he then said that they had been seeing that same woman there for years. And this is where things take a turn for the worse. Lexi says from that point on, the encounters in her house that were once very small became very amplified and very scary. And she said specifically that many nights she would feel like there was something in the room with her, even more specifically watching her sleep. But again, she brushed it off because she thought she was just scared. Until she was having a friend sleep over, and her friend woke her up in the middle of the night to specifically tell Lexi that she had seen a woman looking at her from over the footboard, just like this. And Lexi thought it was a joke until her friend described the exact same woman she had been seeing. And I guess things get even worse, because after this instance, Lexi's mom begins telling her that she has been seeing her walk around the house when she's not home. She can hear Lexi talking when she's not home. And Lexi had been seeing this woman in mirrors, like when she's brushing her teeth, for example. And on top of this, and what I think is the scariest, Lexi would hear clapping when nobody else was home, and people talking when nobody else is home. And most recently, she tells me that they have 2 dogs, and she brought one of the dogs into her room when she starts to hear the other dog whining and a woman talking to her dog. So immediately she opens the door, tells the other dog, like, Mom's home. The dog does not get up and greet her mom like he would normally do. And when Lexi walks out to go see her mom, she finds out that her mom is not home, her car is not in the driveway, and she is still at work. So again, she goes back in her room, closes the door, clear as day, hears a woman say, "Come here, where are you?" And she can hear the dog go from whining to barking. So immediately she thinks that someone has broken into her house. She locks her door, gets her softball bat out, and calls her mom to come home immediately. The dog she had with her began barking, and thankfully her mom only works like 10 minutes away, so she rushed home. But during the time of her mom coming home, Lexi began to hear heavy footsteps coming towards her door. And Lexi specifically states that the energy felt so heavy, and when whatever was outside of the door got to the door, it got eerily silent, and the keychain she has on her door began swaying back and forth. Her mom then got home, found no one in the house, and Lexi believes that the spirit attached itself to her and followed them home and has not left, because that last instance happened like 3 weeks ago. And before I get into anything else, I just have to pause and say I've had to cut a couple of things out because I was hearing banging noises on my wall. And if you don't know, now you do. I either film early in the morning or late at night. I do this because then I don't have to worry about outside noises or my neighbors being awake, etc. So I don't know, and it's furthering the I don't like making videos about demons kind of thing. What really freaked me out was the clapping and obviously the lady looking over the footboard. I don't like that. And I swear I can almost see her face when I'm talking about this. And when I read it the first time, I could see her. But anyways, that's gonna do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.